It must have been a long night out there on the Sea of Tiberias. Not surprisingly, this futile fishing expedition had been Peter's idea. Back in Galilee, after the emotional roller coaster of recent events in Jerusalem, the impetuous Peter abruptly announced to several of his disciple companions that he was going fishing. Now, people have different ways of coping when they have lost someone close to them, and their whole life suddenly needs to be reoriented. Perhaps Peter just needed to immerse himself in an old familiar routine while he sorted things out. It could be that he was now wondering if he could trust his own eyes and ears after having been confronted face to face with a risen Jesus on 2 occasions. Fishing. Why not? Several restless disciples seem to have concluded as they dropped what they were doing to join Peter as he headed for the shore. In contrast to a voyage with Jesus they all remembered vividly, the waters were calm and still as Thomas, Nathanael, James, John, and 2 other disciples put out to sea with Peter late in the day. Nothing stirred all night long as their nets dangled listlessly over the side of the boat. As dawn finally broke, they became aware of the dim figure of a man on the beach calling out to them. Just within range of their hearing, he called, "Children, you have no fish, do you?" "No," they responded with weary resignation. "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." A strangely familiar voice from the shore instructed them. If we pay close attention, we may just imagine we can hear the disciples grumbling, "But we've never done it that way before," as they wearily lowered their net on the other side of the boat. It may be that you have heard a sermon already on this scripture passage in this post-Easter season. Many are the sermons that focus on the threefold charge Jesus gave to Peter to feed his sheep that immediately follows this. For our purposes, there are depths of meaning in this fish story preceding it that I find worth exploring more fully today. Truthfully, I find myself identifying more with weary and discouraged disciples on their boat these days than I do with guilt-ridden Peter. I can't say for sure, but I suspect that you may as well. Even before I retired, I was beginning to discover the many ways in which change did not agree with me. The truth is, I would probably never have adopted a smartphone without someone buying one for me and nudging me into the 21st century. These are uniquely challenging times, both within the church and within the society in which we call home. Change often assaults us, challenging much of what has formed us and that we hold dear. There are times when we just have to face facts and admit this just isn't working anymore. I found a quote from Franciscan Richard Rohr to be especially perceptive and provocative. You may know Rohr as a well-known writer and founder of the Center for Action and Contemplation. He wrote, "We worshiped Jesus instead of following him on his same path. We made Jesus into a mere religion instead of a journey toward union with God and everything else. This shift made us into a religion of belonging and believing instead of a religion of transformation. Similarly, Jesus Seminar scholar Marcus Borg wrote in Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. He wrote of his personal discovery of what that self-contradicting book title meant. After spending a lifetime uncovering layer upon layer of the mystery of the historical Jesus, Borg became convinced that belief in Jesus was not fundamentally what it was all about. Borg became convinced that what Jesus and the Christian life were really about was a journey of transformation. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus are a call to us to undergo transformation ourselves, to become Easter people, boldly proclaiming hope in the midst of darkness. Weary disciples out there on your boat with nothing to show for your night of fishing, I feel your pain. A little patience, please. Consider the possibility that this discouraging experience may be preparing you for something new. Prepare yourselves to meet Jesus for the first time. Prepare yourselves for a new journey of transformation. That dim figure on the shore, barely visible as dawn is breaking. He's calling to us, the disciples realize. Children, you have no fish, have you? He knows the answer, but the disciples sense his warmth and encouragement. Cast the net to the right side of the boat and you will find some, he suggests. No harm in trying, they surely thought, quickly adding, of course, we've never done it that way before. We've never done it this way before. Sadly, we often forget our Reformation heritage and cling to this as our slogan. Semper Reformanda, reformed and always reforming, is truer to our Presbyterian heritage. It is an invitation to be bold and risk casting nets on the other side now and then. How do we extend a welcome to a whole new generation for whom the church feels like foreign and unfamiliar territory? I'd like to offer you a glimpse of a couple of bold and transformative ventures among Presbyterian churches familiar to me. In doing so, I'm not saying they are models for all to follow. Each is responding with ministry unique to its context and resources. I offer them because they give me hope and encouragement as I see the transformative power of God at work. At the same time, I freely confess that worship with these communities has taken me out of my comfort zone. Perhaps you've heard of the beloved Everybody Church. It is one of 1,001 new worshiping communities under the sponsorship of your San Fernando Presbytery. Currently, they meet in Altadena and minister to young adults with autism and cognitive disabilities. The late Jack Rogers, former moderator of the General Assembly, invited me to join the Disability Task Force formed at Pasadena Presbyterian Church due to my interest in how the church meets the needs of those with hearing loss. I became acquainted with Jack's wife, Sharon, a specialist who works with children with autism and cognitive disabilities. Sharon and I were introduced to beloved Everybody Church by the grandmother of a young woman who regularly attends there and thrives on the affirmation and acceptance she receives there. Bethany McKinney Fox spearheads Beloved Everybody Church and welcomes all who wish to join in extending friendship and caring to individuals with a variety of conditions that would often be barriers to participating in a traditional worship setting. Some are verbal, some are not. A badge you wear when you enter the room indicates to others whether or not touch is welcome. Role play of biblical stories and artistic expression are a vital part of the experience. Recognizing how isolated this population and their families frequently may be, Sharon Rogers and I are dreaming of ways we can extend our welcome at Pasadena to others similarly challenged. When the time is right for us, we will soon have a ready resource as Bethany's book, Disability and the Way of Jesus, comes out at the end of this month. InterVarsity Press. Another setting. Informal Sunday evening worship at Pasadena Presbyterian Church began several years ago as an intentional outreach to folks distrustful or uncomfortable with the institutional church, the so-called nuns and duns and others. Along with periodic summer barbecues on the patio, the church sought to attract the hip, young patrons of the various restaurants down the street with an evening of music and food. The surprise came when the homeless from our weekly meal program showed up in numbers that caught most off guard. Sunday worship evolved in a similar fashion as a generous meal was added following communion, as it moved from our small chapel to the larger Gamble Lounge. I preach at evening worship at regular intervals now and find myself challenged to step up and rethink my communication. Once again, offering acceptance, dignity, and respect is essential. Yes, the free food is clearly the attraction for quite a few, but the rewards are great when in the prayer time an anonymous individual offers, "I wish there were more places like Pasadena Presbyterian Church." We rejoin Peter and the disciples on the Sea of Tiberias as they consider following the advice of the dim figure on the shore. They cast their nets on the right side of the boat and are astonished at the tremendous haul of fish they take. So great is it, 153 fish to be exact, that they are initially unable to bring up the net again. John, a former mender of nets, known as the beloved disciple, is first to recognize why that voice offshore sounded so familiar. "It is the Lord," he exclaims, sending Peter leaping into the sea in an urgent rush to be first to reconnect with Jesus. Making their way to shore in a considerably heavier boat, the rest of the disciples are soon gathered around the charcoal fire where a meal of fish and bread awaits them. If there was any doubt before, no question remained in their minds that this was indeed the risen Jesus who was now serving up breakfast, as they all gloried in the great catch of fish spread out on display before him. An extravagant bounty of God's goodness and grace. Eating together and being with Jesus again was energizing and inspiring. Their community was lifted from despair to a new sense of hope, belonging, and purpose. Over a meal of fish and bread, Jesus reconnected and refashioned this community. It all began with a bit of network, altering the formula, trying something new. And now it's up to us, as followers of the risen Christ, to go out as Easter people, never fearing the new thing that God is doing in our midst. We are setting out on a journey of transformation, boldly proclaiming hope to a wounded world. Amen.